Okay, welcome everybody to another edition of the Phya Academy video newsletter. This week we are continuing our investigation into the principle of accountability. Hey everybody, always great to see you. Love seeing you in this digital form. I wanted to talk a bit about accountability and its relationship to principle and its relationship to standing up for your beliefs. There's been, I think, a lot of that going on in the sports world. Athletes feeling a little bit more emboldened, a little bit more confident in expressing their political ideals and even engaging in certain types of protests. We've certainly just had the saga with Novak Djokovic and the Australian Open, but this is something that for people in the sports world is a new development. Some people like it. Some people don't. It's likely related to if you like the political opinion that's coming out of the athlete's mouth. Like if you agree with it, then you think, yeah, it's great. Athletes should be political. And if you don't, they should probably just shut up and dribble. Right. But I don't think that's the right way to think about this. And it lets us know that we have certain obligations and responsibilities ourselves to our own principles, right? Being accountable to our own values and beliefs when we think about this athletic model, this athletic example, because athletics as an endeavor, as an activity in society, are a praise, are a celebration of sacrifice, of struggle, of overcoming adversity. It's clearly obvious in the physical sense, right? In terms of the training, the discipline, the rigor, the agony of the competition, right? And that those who compete deserve a special praise. And these are the people that inspire us to search for our potential and to aim for it and to grab onto it. But they can also teach us how to stand up for what is right when we understand this strong connection to accountability to ourselves. And when thinking about political protests and athletes, like there is no higher standard than Muhammad Ali. And I think his example sets the standard and gives us a really great example of how athletics can embolden us to stand for what is right and what we believe is right. So for those who know Muhammad Ali, he is the heavyweight champion of the world in boxing in the mid and late 1960s. He's starting to get a little bit outspoken in terms of his politics, particularly his opposition to the Vietnam War. Lo and behold, he's then conscripted and drafted into the army, so he must report or face penalty. He does not want to fight this war. He is a recent convert to the Muslim religion and believes in peace and nonviolence. And he makes a choice. He decides to give up his heavyweight title in the prime of his career and serves jail time rather than fighting in a war that he does not believe in. This was a huge controversy at the time. Half the population loved what he did. Half the population thought it was traitorous, treasonous, right? Dishonorable, cowardly, you name it. But over time, those voices have softened and faded, and what's left is a pretty clear recognition that Muhammad Ali, whether you agree with his stance or not, certainly was honorable in the way he went about his protest, right? He took on the sacrifices. He took on the struggle. He took on the negative consequences himself. He never asked anybody else to go and sit in that jail cell for him, right? He was accountable to his own beliefs. And this quote, Muhammad Ali quote, I mean, it's a striking quote. He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life. Let me say that again. He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life. Clearly, this makes a lot of sense when we're talking about his boxing career. Every time you step in the ring, you're risking your physical health, you're risking even your life. People can die in the boxing ring, and Muhammad Ali, he suffered his debilitating Parkinson's as a result of his years and years in the ring. We understand what it means to be courageous in training and disciplined in training. But it's that courage to stand up when it's difficult that I think Muhammad Ali just absolutely exemplifies. Don't know what that was. Let's keep going. And this, I think, connects really nicely back to the origins of sport, to the patron saint of the ancient Greek gymnasium, Herakles. Right? He is faced with a choice in his early life, and we have a video. It was one of our first videos where I detailed the specific choice between virtue and vice and what that means for Herakles. And you guys have access to all of the old videos, right, through that link at the bottom of our email to the playlist on YouTube. So you can go back and you can check out, I believe it is actually the very first video on accountability. So that's kind of fun. But essentially, at the age of maturity, Herakles is given a choice. He is given the choice of walking down the road of vice, which is the easy road, but the road towards meaninglessness. Or he's given the choice to walk down the road towards virtue, which is the tight and narrow, the difficult road, the road that is littered with struggle and toil, but leads to his true destiny. So Herakles clearly chooses the road to virtue. This leads him on the path towards his birthright, which is kind of a royalty. And in order to gain that, he has to go through the 12 labors, like the physical, arduous labors of fighting giants and monsters, using his intellect to devise cunning plans where other people had fallen, and then using his incredible physical strength, dexterity, in order to defeat others. And what was his reward, right? His reward was apotheosis. His reward was transcendence, right? He's the only mortal in Greek mythology to become a demigod. He sits beside his father Zeus in the panoply of the Olympian gods, and he is the founder of the Olympics and essentially the patron saint of Greek athletics and competition. And it's resulted and related to his accountability, right? His accountability to his destiny, his accountability to suffer the consequences, to agonize through the competitions, to agonize through the labors, right? And just as Muhammad Ali didn't ask anybody else to go through his suffering, Herakles endured what was necessary in order to reach his destiny. Same thing for Muhammad Ali, right? As a world heavyweight champion boxer, he was a very important person. But as perhaps the greatest emblem of what it means to stand up for what you believe and to sacrifice what's necessary, I think he's had an even greater influence. That clearly was part of his destiny that he had to lean into, but he had to endure. And he had to be accountable to the right kinds of sacrifices, the ones that he took on himself in order to justify his beliefs and principles and values. So what does that mean for us? We live in trying times. We all are being challenged. We're all being pushed and pulled, thinking about our values and principles. What do we stand up for? When do we stand up for it? What's the right time? What's the proper amount of sacrifice? What's the proper amount of risk to take on? And there's no right answer. I can't tell you what the right amount of sacrifice is for you. You can't tell me what the right amount of sacrifice is for me. I can't even figure it out half the time. I think the best we can hope for is to understand what are the right kinds of sacrifices. And that's what Herakles and Muhammad Ali show us. The right kind of sacrifices are the ones that you bear the consequences towards. When we're talking about principles and beliefs, asking other people to bear the brunt of the consequences for your stand, that's not honorable. Are you standing up in a time when it's popular, when there's not much risk to yourself, when you're more so going along with the crowd? Is that the right kind of sacrifice? Is that fidelity to your belief? I was talking with a friend this week about the activism of a current athlete, LeBron James. And I think LeBron James actually gives us a really good example to pit against Muhammad Ali. Some of what LeBron James does in terms of his activism, I think, is quite noble, especially the giving back part. He gives back to kids in his hometown, builds schools, and provides hope to impoverished kids, which, regardless of what you think of LeBron, like that's a pretty honorable thing. However, and he makes the sacrifice that are necessary. He gives his own money to do that. However, when talking about some of his other political activism, I think you can start to see where the hollowness can come through. When he is speaking on behalf of Black Lives Matter, not going to say it's not justified or it's right or it's wrong or he doesn't believe it. It's not my place to say. What I can observe is that it's not a very courageous act because he's celebrated for it. He is hailed. It might even help him, right? The league, the NBA that he plays for, supported the protests, put Black Lives Matter on the courts. So it's not exactly that he was, fighting against stiff resistance. Sure, there are people that don't like what he said, but there seemed to be a lot more cultural support, right, and social support for somebody like LeBron James than there certainly was for Muhammad Ali, right? And then we can juxtapose that stand in America with his utter silence on issues in China, which the NBA has a pretty cozy relationship with China, and LeBron James even has a financial relationships with China due to his movie production company, right? If you want to make money in movies, you have to play nice with China. So in some ways, right, this example gives us a really nice frame of the kinds of sacrifices that are good. The kinds of sacrifices when it comes to principle, when it comes to belief, when it comes to accountability to ourselves, that has to be related to our own sacrifice. It has to be related to our own willingness to endure. That's what Muhammad Ali shows us. That's what the lesson of Herakles proves to us, especially thinking about the origins of athletic endeavor. And athletic endeavor in terms of accountability, right? We all, again, understand the physical accountability, but that accountability to our courage, to our strength, right, is something that we don't often consider seriously. That in learning to become accountable to a rigid training schedule, to the rules of a competition, right, to respecting our opponents, we also can gain the accountability to ourselves to know when we're betraying our beliefs, or when we're adequately standing up to them. And again, it's difficult for us to know on balance when it's time to stand up or when it's not time to stand up or what's the right amount of sacrifice or what's not. But I want to end with this ideal of a noble sacrifice. And the noble sacrifice is the one that you take on yourself and are willing to bear the consequences of without asking others or expecting others to help you along the way. And I think that's really what these examples show. Okay, I will talk to you later. I hear the footsteps going on upstairs, which means it's time to go and start the day. Okay, I will see you all next time, beautiful people.